So, you want to know the secret message? The one from the Somerton Man's code? The short answer is nobody knows. That's the honest truth. For over 70 years, spies, cops, mathematicians, and amateur sleuths have stared at that little jumble of letters. They've tried everything, and they've all come up with nothing. Nothing certain, anyway. The message is still a secret. But the story of that secret is one of the strangest you'll ever hear. It's not just about a code, it's about a dead man on a beach, a hidden clue from a book of ancient poetry, a mysterious nurse, and a puzzle that has haunted Australia for generations. It's a story with no beginning, and, so far, no real end. It all started on December 1st, 1948. At Somerton Beach, just outside Adelaide, South Australia, a man was found lying in the sand, propped up against a seawall. He was dressed nicely. A suit and tie, polished shoes, everything was neat. He looked like he was just sleeping, except he was dead. The police came. They checked his pockets. There was no wallet, no identification, no money, nothing to say who he was. They found a few small things. A train ticket to the beach, but it was unused. A bus ticket, a pack of chewing gum, some cigarettes, but they were the wrong brand for the pack they were in. Strange little details. The strangest detail was that all the labels on his clothes had been carefully cut off. The tag on his coat, his shirt, his pants, gone. Someone didn't want this man to be identified. The coroner examined the body. He couldn't find a cause of death. There were no marks of violence, no signs of a struggle. His last meal was a pasty, eaten a few hours before he died. The coroner suspected poison, a type of poison that was fast-acting and impossible to trace, but there was no proof. The official cause of death was left open. It was probably poison, but they couldn't be sure. So, the police had a body without a name and a death, without a cause. A complete mystery. They took his fingerprints and sent them around the world. No matches. They published his photo in the papers. Nobody came forward to claim him. The man was a ghost. They made a plaster cast of his head and shoulders, hoping someone might recognize him later. He became known simply as the Somerton Man. Months went by, the case was going cold. Then, in April 1949, they found a new clue. A professor who had examined the body back in January took another look at the man's clothes. He found a tiny hidden pocket sewn into the waistband of the man's trousers. It was a fob pocket, a place for a pocket watch, but it was so well concealed nobody had noticed it. And inside this secret pocket was a tiny, tightly rolled scrap of paper. On the paper were two words, printed in a fancy font. Tamam Shud. What did it mean? A detective who knew a bit about literature recognized it. It was Persian. It meant it is ended or finished. The words were the final phrase from a book of poetry called The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. This was a huge break. The police now had a direct link to a specific book. They just had to find the exact copy that this scrap was torn from. They sent out a public appeal. They asked people to check their copies of the Rubaiyat. A few weeks later, a man walked into the police station. He lived near Glenelg, a suburb not far from Somerton Beach. He told the police a strange story. Around the time the body was found, he had parked his car near the beach. He'd left the windows down. When he came back, he found a book tossed into the back seat. He didn't think much of it. He just took the book and put it in his glove compartment. He'd forgotten all about it until he saw the police appeal in the newspaper. He gave the book to the police. It was a rare New Zealand edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. They turned to the last page. The words Tamam Shud were torn out. The scrap from the dead man's pocket was a perfect match. They had found the book. And this book, they hoped, would finally give them some answers. It did the opposite. It just created a deeper mystery. On the back cover of the book, written faintly in pencil, were 5 lines of capital letters. This was it. This was the Somerton Man's code. This had to be the secret message. The reason for his death, his identity, everything. Police and military intelligence experts were called in. They were the best code breakers in the country. They looked at the letters. They were stumped. It wasn't any standard cipher they recognized. The second line, Mliawi, was crossed out. Maybe it was a mistake. Or maybe the crossing out was part of the code itself. The letters didn't seem to follow any simple pattern. In English, some letters are much more common than others. E, T, and A are the most frequent, but in this code, the letter frequencies were all over the place. It didn't look like a simple substitution cipher, where you just swap one letter for another. Maybe it was a one-time pad code. That's a type of code spies use. It's theoretically unbreakable. You use a key, like a random sequence of letters, to encrypt your message. The person receiving it needs the exact same key to decrypt it. The key is only used once, and then destroyed. If this was a one-time pad, then without the key, the message would be unreadable forever. This idea fueled the theory that the Somerton Man was a spy. The time and place fit. It was 1948, the beginning of the Cold War. Australia was a key ally of the United States and Britain. And not far from Adelaide was the Woomera Rocket Range, a top-secret weapons testing facility. Was he a Soviet spy trying to get information, or was he an agent from another country who had been caught and eliminated? An untraceable poison and a secret code certainly sounded like something out of a spy novel. But the book held more than just the code. Inside, the police found two other clues. One was a phone number. It was unlisted. They traced it to a young woman who lived just a few minutes' walk from where the body was found. Her name was Jessica Thompson, though at the time the police only knew her by the nickname Justin, that she sometimes used. She was a nurse. The police went to see her. They showed her the plaster cast of the Somerton Man's head. When she saw it, her reaction was extreme. One of the detectives said she looked like she was about to faint. She seemed completely shocked and horrified, but when they asked her if she knew the man, she said no. She denied everything. She said she had no idea who he was or why he would have her phone number. Did she sell a copy of the Rubaiyat to him once? Yes, she admitted that. She had owned a copy of that same rare edition. She had given it to a man named Alfred Boxall, an army lieutenant she had known during the war. The police thought they finally had their man. Alfred Boxall must be the Somerton Man. But there was a problem. They found Alfred Boxall, and he was very much alive. He was living in Sydney and had no idea about any of this, and when they asked him about the book, he went to his bookshelf and pulled out his copy of the Rubaiyat. It was the one Justin had given him years ago, and on the last page the words Tamam Shud were still there, intact. This was another dead end. So there were two copies of this rare book. The Somerton Man had one, and Alfred Boxall had the other, and the woman who connected them both claimed to know nothing. The police were suspicious. They felt she was holding something back, but they couldn't prove anything. She was a private citizen and she wasn't talking. Her secret, whatever it was, died with her in 2007. Years later, her daughter said in an interview that she believed her mother did know the Somerton Man. She said her mother could speak Russian, but never said where she learned it. She hinted that her mother's life was more complicated than anyone knew, and that she was sympathetic to communism. This just added more fuel to the spy theory. So, let's go back to the code. What have people tried over the years? Well, the first thing codebreakers do is look for patterns. Is it an anagram? Did someone just jumble up the letters of a sentence? Unlikely. The combination of letters doesn't easily form any known words. Is it an acrostic? This is a popular theory. An acrostic is where each letter stands for the first letter of a word. So, WRGOABABD could be why I read gravy oranges, always bad and bad, darling, or something like that. The problem is, it could be anything. You can make up endless sentences to fit the letters. Without any context, you can't know which one is right. It's just a guessing game. Some have suggested the first line might be, we recommend glasses of a B. ABD. Maybe the letters aren't letters at all, maybe they represent numbers, or maybe they are coordinates on a map. People have tried everything. They've tried to link them to the text of the Rubaiyat itself. Perhaps the letters refer to specific words on specific pages. For example, the first letter W means go to the first verse and find the 10th word. Something like that. But again, there are so many ways to do this, and none of them have produced a coherent message. The biggest problem is that the message is so short. With a long-coded message, you can use statistical analysis. You can count how many times each letter appears and compare it to the normal frequency of letters in the language. With only a few dozen letters, that kind of analysis is almost useless. There's not enough data. For decades, the case sat there. The Somerton Man was buried in a cemetery in Adelaide under a tombstone that read, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach." The code sat in a police file, a silent testament to a life no one understood. But in recent years, technology and a renewed public fascination have brought the case back to life. A professor at the University of Adelaide named Derek Abbott became obsessed with it. He and his students have applied modern computational techniques to the code. They've run it through countless algorithms. They've tried to determine if the letters were written randomly or if they have the non-random structure of a real language. Their conclusion was that the letters are not random. They probably do mean something. It's not just a doodle. But what? One of Abbott's more intriguing ideas is that the code might be a kind of verse-based cipher, using the Rubaiyat as the key. But again, no one has been able to make it work. The secret has been kept safe. The human side of the story took an even stranger turn. While researching the case, Professor Abbott tracked down Jessica Thompson's family. He ended up meeting her granddaughter, Rachel Egan. They fell in love and got married. The man trying to solve the mystery married the granddaughter of the woman who might have held the key to it all. It's a twist so bizarre, it feels like it belongs in a movie. And then came the biggest break in over 70 years. It wasn't about the code, but about the man himself. For years, Abbott and others had been pushing to have the Somerton Man's body exhumed for DNA testing. In 2021, the authorities finally agreed. They dug up the coffin and were able to retrieve some DNA from the man's hair, which had been preserved in the plaster cast made back in 1948. Abbott teamed up with an American genealogist named Colleen Fitzpatrick. She is an expert at using DNA to solve cold cases. They took the tiny bit of DNA they had and started building a family tree. It was a massive, painstaking process. They built a tree with over 4,000 people on it, and they searched for a missing branch. A man who was born in the right year and who disappeared around 1948. In July 2022, they announced they had found him. They believe the Somerton Man was a man named Carl Charles Webb. Who was Carl Webb? He was an electrical engineer and instrument maker from a suburb of Melbourne. He was born in 1905, which would have made him 43 when he died, a perfect match for the coroner's estimate. He was married, but his wife had moved out and filed for divorce. He had a passion for poetry and was known to write it himself. He had a sister-in-law who lived in South Australia, which could explain why he was in Adelaide. And then he simply disappeared. Sometime after April 1947, he vanished from his life in Melbourne. His wife didn't know where he went. His family didn't know. He just walked away. The next time he appears in any record, it's as a dead body on Somerton Beach. This identification is a monumental step forward. It gives the ghost a name. It gives him a history, a family, a profession, but it's not yet officially confirmed by the South Australian police. They are still doing their own DNA work, but Abbott and Fitzpatrick are very confident. So if the Somerton Man was Carl Webb, an engineer from Melbourne, what does that do to the spy theory? It might weaken it. He doesn't sound like a Cold War spy. He sounds like a regular guy whose life had fallen apart. His wife had left him. He was living a solitary life. Maybe he was depressed. Maybe he was just wandering. This leads to another major theory about the case. It was a story of love and suicide. Think about it. Tamam Shud. It is ended. What a perfect suicide note. It's poetic and final. Maybe Carl Webb was in love with Jessica Thompson. Maybe they had a relationship during the war that ended. He came to Adelaide to see her one last time. She rejected him. Heartbroken, he went to the beach, took some poison, and died, leaving a final cryptic message in the book that once connected them. In this version of the story, the code is not a spy's secret. It could be the desperate, jumbled thoughts of a dying man. The first letters of a poem he was writing in his head, or just a meaningless scrawl. And Jessica Thompson's horrified reaction? It wasn't because she saw a dead spy. It was because she saw the man she had just rejected, and she felt responsible for his death. Her denial was not to protect a country, but to protect herself from a terrible secret and a public scandal. This theory is more personal, more tragic, and in some ways more believable than a global espionage plot. But it doesn't explain everything. Why were the tags cut out of his clothes? A man planning suicide might not care about such things, but someone trying to erase their identity might. Why did he have the wrong brand of cigarettes? It's a small thing, but odd. Why was the copy of the Rubaiyat thrown into a stranger's car? It's also theatrical. So planned. And it still doesn't explain the code. If the spy theory is true, the code is a message for another agent. A report on Woomera, the names of contacts, a warning, something vital. If the suicide theory is true, it's a personal cry of despair. So, let's look at the letters again with these ideas in mind. Bergo Ababded Mliayoy crossed out WW Panapi Mliabo Sam Scab. Some have tried to link the letters to Jessica Thompson. The line WTib and Panapi has been speculated to mean want to buy in my place a new edition, the Rubaiyat please. A bit of a stretch. Another idea is that the final line Itim Sam Scab could mean it's time to move to South Australia, Mosley Street. But the last three letters, GAB, remain a mystery, and the rest of the code still makes no sense. The crossed out line Mlioi is also a puzzle. Some analysts think it looks like a mistake. Perhaps the sender, or Webb himself, started to write something and then realized he was using the wrong key or the wrong system. Or maybe it's MLIM on I, and he stopped. The I also looks like it could be a T. The handwriting is not perfectly clear. What if it's Multioi? That changes everything. Every letter's identity is up for debate. Look at the first line. Bergo Ababd. Is the first letter a W or an M? Is the second an R or a V? It's hard to be certain. So we have a name, Carl Webb, but we don't have a story. Was he a spy who used his engineering skills as a cover? Or was he just a heartbroken man? Did he die by suicide, or was he murdered? If he was murdered, who did it, and why? Was Jessica Thompson his killer, his lover, his spy handler, or just an innocent woman caught up in something she didn't understand? We still don't know, and we still don't know what the message says. The secret in the Tamam Shud paper scrap is that it has guarded its secret perfectly. It is a lock without a key. The code is the perfect symbol for the case itself, a series of clues that seem to point somewhere but lead you nowhere. Every answer just creates more questions. We found the man, but we lost the spy. We gained a name, but we lost the mystery of the unknown man. Or did we? Knowing his name as Carl Webb doesn't tell us why he was on that beach. It doesn't tell us how he died, and it certainly doesn't tell us what those letters mean. The mystery has just changed its shape. Before it was, who is the Somerton Man? Now, it's, who was Carl Webb, and what happened to him? The code is the final wall. Maybe one day, someone will find the key. Maybe an old diary will surface, or maybe a computer will finally see a pattern that human eyes have missed for over 70 years. Or maybe it's just a jumble of letters after all, a red herring in a case full of them. A prank played by a dying man on the world he was leaving behind. But people won't stop trying. The puzzle is too compelling. A man is found dead. He has no identity. His clothes have no labels. He carries a scrap of paper with the words, "It is ended." That scrap leads to a book. The book leads to a secret code and a mysterious woman. It's the perfect mystery. And at its heart are those letters. Typed out, they look so plain, but written in faint pencil on the back of an old book of poetry, they feel like they hold the weight of a man's entire life. They are his last words. We just can't read them. The secret message? It's still a secret. And maybe that's why we can't let it go.